Hello, everyone. My name's Jennifer J. Raffler, and I'm your host for the Sol2Soul Global Summit. Learn the truth about our sun, how it heals us, supports our spiritual evolution, and more. Today, we have an amazing guest, a hardcore truth seeker and promoter, Shem Jamal. Shem Jamal is the creator and head author of DiscerningTheMystery.com. His goal at DTM is to provide truth seekers with a diverse array of news and information, as well as the skills necessary for accurate, independent journalism and research, and to help readers succeed in their overall quest for knowledge. Shem has a bachelor's degree in industrial design, which has gained him some particularly interesting work experiences. More importantly, this training helped him hone his skill of observation and environment. The field of product development introduced Shem to a brand new way of observing and treasuring our physical experience as human beings. This primed Shem to study and respect his own awakening experience as it unfolded and drove him to help others discover and appreciate the inner journey and its ability to prepare us for virtually every new discovery in our lives. Welcome, Shem.
Thank you,
for
Jennifer.
Joining.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's great to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you. Oh my gosh, finally. Woo!
For so long.
Yes, Shem and I have been trying to connect to do this interview, and the universe is like, no, not yet, not yet, not yet. And finally today, it's going to happen. So it's going to be awesome.
Totally.
So, Shem, something that we have never discussed really was your awakening experience. And I know you got some really juicy details. And
yeah.
I was wondering if you could share that with our viewers.
Sure. Let's see. Where do I start? This was around 2009, 2010. I came from quite a strict religious background. It was a Christian church, and up until that point, you could say I was really dedicated. This was sort of the definition of upright conduct in a person's life that I was taught. And so this was what I was dedicated to because I wanted to be as good of a person as I could be. Later on, I realized that this was not entirely the case. I guess you could say I was placing all of my power in the hands of other people. I wasn't really taking responsibility for it.
Yeah.
But I'd been taught that that was the right thing to do, that you're supposed to give your power up. That's what good people do, you know. And
yeah.
So I began to see that there were different, you could say, seeds of untruth kind of sown among the benevolent wisdom, I guess you could say.
Okay.
You could say there's seeds of truth and seeds of deception within that doctrine. And so I guess you could say that was my first opportunity to learn discernment. Okay. So I went from depending upon other people to depending upon myself to sort of decipher the difference between truth, half-truth, untruth. And I think the first time I started breaking away and going my own direction was when well, it's funny because in situations like this, you don't really see a problem unless the problem is really over, you know, kind of blaring in your face. So that's what I had to experience. And so I took that, I learned from it, and I started studying energy. I also had a background in martial arts, so I wanted to learn what meditation was, what the big deal was about, you know, why people had been studying these for thousands of years, and got into meditation, learned about my own ki energy, or chi, depending on what country you're from. But I was basically learning that there was all of this knowledge, all of this applicable, measurable knowledge that was not included in my upbringing. And I was thinking, okay, you know, I was taught the right thing. This was all the truth I needed to know. What's all this other stuff that they didn't tell me?
Yeah.
So that was one aspect. That was the beginning of my awakening experience. Then we get to phase 2.
Uh-oh.
And that was when, oh my goodness. Well, most people have probably read about my accounts about abduction experiences. And later I find out that there are actually many people experiencing this. Some people say there's a human military element to it. Some people say there's an ET element, depending upon what you experience with this. But
Sure.
I had the type of experiences that you could basically, I had evidence. Like I would wake up with spots of blood on, obscure parts of my body. I would wake up and, brush my hand across my face because my nose itched. But then I felt a sort of a long, hard object protruding out of my nostril. And I mean, these are things you don't really mistake. You can't really,
Yeah.
you can't really say, oh, I was dreaming, or,
Sure.
I was running. Somehow during my sleep, I ran and fell after taking my shirt off and then put it back on and got it back into bed. There's a certain logic that goes to it.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it sounds crazy to some people, or it may sound crazy, I can't discount the evidence as well as the memories that I had. So that was sort of the second phase of awakening. The third, I guess you could say, was a combination of all of these, plus the desire to apply what I'd learned. Okay. Was sort of the phase of active learning and active application of what I did learn. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the gist. I guess you could say I'm in phase 3 right now.
Okay.
I'm still learning to apply all this.
So these entities that were abducting you or experimenting on you or whatever they were doing.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. I guess I could talk on that. I mean, there were times where I woke up, and there's actually one instance. It's kind of a strange, altered state of mind. So it's really difficult to say what did happen and what didn't.
Sure.
I do remember different sensational experiences. One involved actually being carried out of my room. Let's say there are about 10 or 12 of these beings. And I can't say, what stage or what phase of consciousness I was at, but I did see 12 beings. I stared at one straight in the face, and they didn't seem to have much personality about them. I would think that these qualified as sort of automatons. They were they may have been sort of the gray androids or cyborg beings. But there were others that seemed to have personality. It was just like they were short people who, had different skin and have to, not wear clothes. But yeah, there were different experiences. Later, I find out there's a possibility that those could have been artificial in some way.
Gotcha.
And also, there was one instance where I was actually approached in broad daylight by 3 obvious humans, and they seemed to have some strange things to say. I don't want to get into what exactly they said or the specifics of the situation, just because I'm not really sure about safety.
Sure.
But it was people who knew a little bit more about me than strangers would.
Understood.
Yeah. So that was in broad daylight. I was coming back from the grocery store, like, where are these people?
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. Interesting.
Very much so. And I appreciate you sharing your awakening story with us, especially those details, because I know for a fact that you are not alone. I've experienced my own experiences as well, which I'm not going into, but there are many people out there and they're scared to come forward. But by you coming forward and sharing your story is going to give them the courage to share their story as well. So thank you for doing that. That's huge. It really
Oh,
is.
yeah. My
Yeah,
pleasure. Thank you.
sure. So to get back to why we're here today, we're talking about soul. Um, oh, you have so many things that you could share with us, and I feel like we're going to be here for a very long time. Jamal.
We could be, yeah. I got time.
All right, good. So the first thing I have on my list is the link or the relationship between sacred geometry and our sun. Could you speak a little bit?
Sure. Let's see. Well, this has multiple names. You could call it an energetic geometric relationship. Some people call it hyperdimensional physics.
Okay.
Basically, if you take all 5 of the platonic solids and you nest them within each other, as we know, this is spherical geometry. I've kind of discussed this on multiple articles on DTM. But if you have all of these nested platonic solids, basically relative to the same size sphere, because each of
Okay.
them fits inside of a sphere, you will begin to see different points where those where that geometry touches the outside of the sphere.
Okay.
So you take something like a star tetrahedron. It looks like a 3-dimensional star. David I have this kind of diagram on, I think, a recent article. But where these touch is right around where between 19.4 and 19.6 degrees north latitude and south latitude. And when you look at this location on any spherical body within the solar system, whether it be the sun or a planet, you see distinct features. In Jupiter, it's where the great red spot is. On Neptune, it's where the great dark spot is. On Earth, it's where the continent or where the island of Hawaii is. It's where that change of islands is. It's also where the Great Pyramids happen to be.
Okay.
On Mars, it's where Olympus Mons is, and I believe there's a relative one on the planet Venus as well.
Okay.
But you see nature sort of mimicking or responding to something at 19.6 degrees. And I believe it was Richard C. Hoagland who did this earlier on. He wrote a paper, I believe it was a paper between himself and David Wilcock, who studied this phenomenon early on. And basically what you have is the simplest explanation would be that there's some type of geometric interaction or energetic interaction between these solar systemic bodies and this geometry. So I'm not sure if that quite answers the question. Was there something else here?
So is there anything specific or special that's going on in the sun at 19.6 degrees? Are there solar eruptions or CMEs or anything going on there?
Oh, yeah. Well, 19.6 degrees north and south latitude are basically where or the majority of where all of the sunspots are.
Okay.
And these are sort of the irregularities you see on the sun's surface. It's where the magnetic anomalies are located. It's basically holes in the corona. And if I'm not mistaken, this is where most of the eruptions or most of the kind of the peaks on the graphs where we're measuring the sun, that's where they take place. So.
Okay. Very interesting. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And sorry for the ruckus that you probably heard in the background. My dog decided to jump on and off of the sofa.
No, it's okay.
Okay. So the solar flash, I was wondering if you could explain what that is kind of in layman's terms for our viewers, for our that aren't, so inclined to do the research yet, but I'm sure if they watch this interview, they may be prompted to research a little bit more.
Right, definitely. Well, let's see. The solar flash has been explained in many different ways, but I try to come at it from an energetic, spiritual, and scientific perspective, combining the three so that there's sort of an explanation for multiple backgrounds or people from multiple backgrounds. So basically, you have what you can call this phenomenon of a galactic superwave. We've heard of this before. I actually have a theory that sort of links the two together, sort of this flash phenomenon and the galaxy sort of pulsing like a pulse.
Oh,
There was a scientist, I believe he's still living. His name was Dr. William Tift, and
okay.
what Tift discovered, it was either Tift or Dr. Harold Aspdin. These are two of the scientists, fairly significant astronomers, that discovered that the universe sort of shares what seems to be this geometric relationship between objects of larger size and higher states of energy, and subsequently lower
Okay.
objects in size and states of energy. But in combination, these two scientists discovered that you have, say, a galactic center. These centers are clusters of stars. And believe it was Dr. William Tift who discovered that there was a gradually decreasing level of energy of each star the farther you travel outside of a galactic center.
Okay.
So the farther away you get from the galactic center, the lower the energetic state is. And the interesting part is that there's a specific graduating energetic level. So I'm trying to put this in simpler terms here. As you move away from the galaxy, there's a specific amount where energy drops.
Okay.
So if you have, say, 0 or 10 at the center, it would be 9 at a specific distance. You go out that same distance, it would be 8. You go out another level, it would be 7. And so it's as though there's this order to galactic energy. And so Dr. Aspdin, he postulated that somehow the center of the galaxy was, or it may have been Tift. There are other people who have studied this, but I'm trying to get my names right as well as my theories. I'm basically looking at their theories and sort of combining them with my own. So I think it's best I'll just state my own just to keep things simple. So what there seems to be happening is the center of the galaxy is pulsing. And as it pulses, it's sort of increasing in its energy. And as it increases, it's actually causing stars to increase subsequently. So you could say that the center of the galaxy is flashing and is causing upgrades and flashes to happen in stars, basically emanating in concentric rings away from the center of the galaxy. So as this, you could call a galactic superwave, as this is coming toward us, this is sort of causing our star to upgrade itself.
Okay.
And there's quite a bit more attached to that. I'm not sure if you want me to go into that, or you could wait till another question. What would you like to do?
You could definitely go into that. It's about the sun. Perfect. I'm not going to stop you.
Okay. All right. So this is kind of complex.
Okay.
It refers to an article I wrote. It was a theory that I sort of put together regarding the Philadelphia Project. You can look this up. It's called Project Rainbow, or the Philadelphia Project, with basically a black ops project. It's alleged to be. It was basically the United States Navy attempted to teleport a battleship, the USS Eldridge, from one location in the northern Atlantic of the United States to another.
Yep.
And it was partially successful, but one, very significant problem arose in that they didn't really predict how people would react to the energetic environment. Basically, when you're teleporting, everything's dematerializing around you. And so that means your body's dematerializing. You're in a completely different state of being. We're used to a solid ground, solid objects around us. We're not used to navigating the entirety of reality. on consciousness alone or intention alone.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so one of the effects of this experiment was that sailors lost their orientation. They didn't know where they were. And when everything rematerialized, uh, people were embedded in solid objects and bulkheads. It was not a pretty scene. A lot of people actually ended up perishing because of this.
Yep.
But I tried to basically explain what happened, what the technology was that achieved this. And what I came up with sort of gets into a little bit more scientific explanation. I'll keep it simple.
Okay.
But if you want to look up, his name is Dr. Haramain, or Dr. Nassim Haramain. He's a genius when it comes to theoretical physics. He's basically rewriting the textbooks regarding the atom and the black hole. And what he postulates is that a star and an atom are pretty much the same thing, in that the atomic nucleus, this cluster of protons, is the same thing as the black hole at the center of a star, just scaled down. He theorizes that a black hole is at the center of the star, and what he refers to as a white hole is surrounding the star, and this is what, of course, gives off the light. Basically, there is sort of an extreme distance between the black hole within the center and the white hole on the outside. I could get into the physics of that, but to keep things simple, there is, of course, we know the protons are positive. The proton nucleus is positive. The electron cloud is negative.
Yeah.
So when we ground these together, we sort of come up with a circuit. But in order to do this, we need an immense amount of energy. Basically, you could imagine an atom, and in a normal situation, you would not be able to put enough electrical energy into this atom to do this. I mean, under normal circumstances, we'd never see this. But say we apply terawatts of energy, technology that's available to military establishments, but not so much commercial, or you can't really buy one of these at Walmart. But if you were to somehow ground the atomic nucleus to the electron cloud, you would have this closed circuit. And my theory was that temporarily, as long as you keep the power switch on, you have a black hole. The thing is, it's consciousness that determines what happens when that black hole is created. Say you wanted to teleport, you could go anywhere in the universe, but you needed to be consciously able to do so before you hit that switch. Otherwise, problems are going to happen.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that was the difference between the people that perished and the people that survived on the Philadelphia event.
Yes, definitely. And I was theorizing that one of the possible effects of all of this energy flowing into the sun and the heliosphere at this time would possibly create a similar effect. People say that it's our consciousness that will determine our trajectory, our future, when this event takes place. And if it's true that a star could react in a similar way as an atom, according to the theory, this would mean that our consciousness has the ability to teleport us basically to any reality that we choose. It might look like the same solar system, might look like the same sun, similar Earth, but the nature of everything we know could change. And so it's a matter of consciousness that sort of determines how that happens. Okay.
Wow. That's just amazing. I have a feeling some of our viewers might be hitting pause, rewind, and let me hear that.
Yeah, it's a lot. I tried to be more definite in the articles I wrote pertaining to it.
Yeah, and we will share the articles during your week of the summit.
Awesome.
Yeah, easy access for our viewers. So there's this idea going around that people that are waiting for the solar event, they're waiting for something to happen, and that's analogous to waiting for a savior to come save you. And I know you have a different view. regarding that, and you disagree with that concept.
Yeah, it sort of reminds me of the state of mind that I was in before I awakened. I was doing the best I could, doing what I thought was, best for myself and the people around me, by sort of obeying the status quo, by, obeying this uh, sort of innate need for someone else to do the heavy lifting for me. And I had to basically realize that it wasn't these people that was going to, be my savior in any way. They weren't going to be accurate guides. They're going to, screw up as much as I might. And so,
Worse.
yeah, worse, or worse. But yeah, the thing is, there's no better person to solve our problems than us. Yeah. And collectively speaking, as a global population, there's no one better to deal with the issues we have and come up with solutions than us. We're the ones looking at it. We're the ones viewing it, whether at a vantage point of the same level, or whether we choose to elevate ourselves above and look at everything from a new dimension of perspective. But basically, I consider we can get into something like the observer effect.
Okay.
I've written about this quite a bit, but I think the two relate. You have an electron. This scientific experiment, you can do this 1,000 times, you'll get very similar results. Basically, an experiment is done with an electron. It's basically called a slit experiment. There's more of a technical term, but for simplistically speaking, you send an electron through a very small slit in a plate. And this electron can either behave like a wave or a particle. If you look up the concept of wave-particle duality, you find out that every particle in the universe has a way of flipping back and forth between wave-particle. Electrons are the same way. The thing is, they found out that during these experiments, you don't really need anything to make an electron behave like a wave, except to make sure no one's looking at it. And my theory is that, well, not necessarily mine, it's probably many, but the theory is that our viewing something, our belief, is actually determining the course of physical reality. You could look at, say, this experiment and sort of expand this out to what happens in our lives, what's going to happen when I go out the door. This gets into our power of manifestation. What is my potential for my experience? We have the question and the answer all wrapped within ourselves. We could ask ourselves, what do I want in any given moment? What do I expect to happen? What's my potential for, what's my scope of belief? And we can look at this, the endless possibilities that are, reality, and see how that compares with what we believe is possible. So
our beliefs, again, are popping up as a priority. And if you do not believe something, there's no way you can make it happen.
Totally. Yeah. So if we believe that, our situation is going to get better, if things are going to improve, it has to start within first. We think of, say, ETs, benevolent ETs from other planets, hoping that they're going to come, make things better for us. They're the ones waiting for us, looking at us as, co-creative supermen and women. Wondering when we're going to start using our superpowers. And I think that it rests within belief. That's where it all starts. Can say that believing is seeing. Seeing is believing, or you have to believe it first in order to see it. There you go.
Yeah, I agree with that. Believing is seeing. It's because if you don't believe it, you'll never see it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I think that's exactly what the observer effect is doing. It's like reality, physical reality, is waiting to see what we will do, waiting to see what our choice is, and then it's gonna put on our show for us. And whether it's an electron or whether it's an atom or an entire star, um, you know, who knows where the possibilities end.
Mm. Wow, amazing. Amazing. Believing is seeing. Yeah, they're just waiting for us to wake up and to create, to co-create this event.
Totally. I definitely think that's so.
So Shem, I was wondering if you could explain a little bit behind the theory of global warming and how it may not be our fault that the Earth is supposedly raising its temperature.
Sure. Let's see. Well, if you look at the concept of the warming of the planet, and I kind of wrote about this a little bit in a recent article, but it's sort of important to look at the largest and most significant energy source in the solar system, that being the sun, as the potential cause. And what we find with the behavior of the sun within the past 20 to 30 years is that it's not only influencing planetary temperatures on the Earth, but it's changing several different factors on pretty much all of the planets. I think Pluto is the only one I haven't actually looked at to this point. But you take a planet like Mercury. Mercury has several different factors that all suddenly just started occurring, energetic upheavals. You have on Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, you have atmospheric changes, plasma, like extreme amounts of plasma activity that didn't exist prior to this. I think some of the most significant ones were something relative to electric tornadoes, and these were happening over the surface of Mercury. Another was there is so much electromagnetic energy occurring over or within the Venusian atmosphere that some theorize that that is what's turning the atmosphere into oxygen. We look up Venus, it's known for its sulfuric content within its atmosphere. It basically kill anything on the surface if it, if you try to transplant Earth-based life. To Venus, it would most likely not last but a few seconds.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Venus has all of this sulfur changing into oxygen somehow. So some theorize that's because of all of the plasma activity. You take plasma from, say, an air purifier. That's what basically creates and cleans air. So it may be that Venus could support life at some time in the future. Again, if it ever did in the past. But you have a planet like Mars. The atmosphere is actually thickening to the point where it's difficult to predict. There was one NASA mission that was sent to Mars. That was basically their probe was damaged because they didn't predict the thickness of atmosphere. Mars has auroras. They've had storms, inclement weather. It's basically the conditions on these planets are changing so quickly that they're difficult to predict and difficult for scientists to study.
Okay.
So regarding the Earth, there is actually, and I believe I listed this on the recent article I wrote on the matter, the Van Allen belt. Most people know that as sort of the electromagnetic field that surrounds the planet. It's what basically NASA and other organizations have to avoid when they send satellites up, because this is a field that is so high in electromagnetic content that it can damage electronics. What they found was this belt is actually forming a brand new belt. So there is all this there's all these excited gases that are surrounding the Earth, and there's a completely new component to it that didn't exist before. And this is not only happening on Earth, but it's happening on Jupiter and I believe Saturn, but very anomalous energetic upheavals that just did not show up 30 years prior to this. But
Okay.
all of a sudden, they're there.
Sure, sure. So all the planetary bodies in our solar system are having significant changes.
Yeah, it seems like it. There's one that sort of supports the idea of the you can call it the geometric energetic foundation for planetary formation and function. Neptune had, and you can look this up. I believe it's even on Wikipedia. You can see.
Mhm.
But there was one instance where the great dark spot on Neptune actually jumped. It disappeared from the southern hemisphere to the northern hemisphere. Just suddenly. I don't know how long it was there. I believe it was a number of Earth months, but
Hmm.
it jumped to the northern hemisphere and then jumped back. And
Wow.
which uh, guess which latitudes that jump occurred at?
Was it 19 points?
It was 19.6, or right around about.
Oh my gosh. Amazing. Amazing.
Oh yeah.
They try to teach us, I say they try to teach us in school, we're resistant, or at least some of us are. But it totally applies. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
it's as though they teach you like I think they teach you platonic solids, but they don't teach you that they actually apply to universal form in the way they do. So,
that's like your quote. What was it? Spirituality is science undiscovered.
oh yeah, wow, did I say that?
Yeah, you said something like that. I
Yeah,
put it
that's
on
pretty good.
my page. Yes.
Oh, wow.
You
Yeah,
have
that's
your quotes.
yeah.
Let's see, what else do I have on my list to discuss? This we kind of touched upon, but maybe we could do a little bit more. How is the sun a gateway to whatever reality we choose?
Ah, yes, that's sort of the Philadelphia project concept. It's as though when, say, you have, and I guess I could cover the other aspect of this, but when you have enough energy to sort of connect the black hole within the center to the white hole, that's where the entirety of the sun becomes its own gateway,
Mm.
and that's where consciousness sort of determines where we go. One of the concepts, I'll try to keep this simple. Um, one of the concepts, I believe it was Dr. Harold Aston, who postulated the existence of space domains. And when these domains, when say a star traverses the boundary between one domain and another, um, gravity sort of turns off temporarily.
Okay.
Um, we could also take into consideration the idea that a star eventually becomes a solar system. Say when a
Mm.
star is newborn and it first begins its process of energetic production, um, it's alone. But as it matures, as it contacts the galactic energy, it starts to develop its own solar system. And as the solar system develops, it grows and eventually becomes an entire galaxy.
Mm.
And this process may actually occur because gravity gets turned off periodically. So it's as though you have this rotation taking place around a star. And if you turn off, say you cut the cord and then tie it again at a longer length, you would have, say, a planet that increases its, distance of orbit, and at the
Mhm.
same time, that star increases in energetic output, so that life can continue on, say, planets within the, Goldilocks zone.
Wow.
So that would cause the. I think it was Aspen who said it would cause the star to disperse. So it would be a pretty spectacular event. It's like all the planets sort of get a bit away, and then the star has its supernova flash event.
Hmm.
And when everything calms down, you have a more mature star and a more developed solar system.
Okay.
Um, but I actually theorize that if the galaxy is pulsing and giving off these flashes, or the central sun at the center of the galaxy is flashing, and stars are doing the same thing. It's could be safe to say that planets are doing the same thing.
Hmm.
Maybe even people are doing the same thing. You know,
Absolutely.
maybe we burst into light, and our consciousness creates a new version of us, and it. I think the possibilities are endless if that relationship is truly fractal. Then that may
Yes.
happen, gravity turning off, and this gateway being created simultaneously. That can create in sort of a consciousness ascension, sort of we hear in the twinkling of an eye, as we've heard before. But it's sort of mind-boggling to think of the possibilities of what that might mean. But I think it's worth considering.
Going with that, what would be our own personal gravity that we would switch off for that leap of growth? What's analogous to that gravity?
Wow, okay, wow, that's a deep question. Let's see.
Something to think about, right?
Yeah, that's really big in the noodle there. I would say it's our limitation, maybe. It's
Ah,
the thing that holds us back from, coming into our own power. It's the savior mentality that might be the gravity that, is holding us back. We're raised to depend on this and that authority, depending on parents, depending on teachers, depending on news broadcasters. We have all of these expectations of, depending on governments, expectations of some higher authority
mhm.
keeping order for us, controlling the world around us.
Yep.
And presently we wonder why it's so difficult to have change. It's because we gave all of our power away and we don't have any in the bank.
Mm.
It's as though we've exhausted our power account, and so it's it, I think it's a matter of learning how to uh, withdraw all of that power back, take all of that power back, and start using it.
Okay.
So maybe the gravity is selling ourselves short, or
Mm.
considering ourselves less than we actually are,
Okay.
or considering ourselves less worthy of benevolent and positive, prosperous experience that we actually deserve, I guess you could say.
Okay. So if we boiled that down a little bit more, could it just be our beliefs?
I guess so. Yeah, yeah. And those beliefs go in many directions, but yeah, it comes down to what we believe is possible.
Okay. Okay. So, given our consciousness a reset, kind of like
Yeah,
shakes up
yeah, sort of.
gravity.
It's it's sort of like the gravity turning off in a bit, or turning off for a moment. It's
It's
as
like
though
a
consciousness has a direct relationship between physical reality. It's as
oh,
though it's its own physicality.
indeed, indeed, yes. Wow, some crazy stuff.
Yeah, I didn't expect you to. Didn't expect you to get so deep. Wow. Oh.
Wow, we've covered a lot, Shem. Is there anything that I should have asked you that I missed, or anything that you would like to contribute before we close this interview out?
Hmm. I would definitely encourage people to study the geometric relationship of their own human makeup,
Okay.
because this sort of directly connects us. It shows a direct energetic, geometric, and consciousness connection with the universe around us.
Okay.
When we see this relationship and nature sort of reiterating these same formulas at pretty much every level of scale, we begin to realize that consciousness is not just it's not just isolated within humanity. It could be that it exists within an entire star or within a
Mhm.
galaxy. That
Yes.
whatever we believe consciousness is, it's sort of everywhere, and we're sort of an active facet of that consciousness, learning about it itself. So, um, yeah, I would definitely encourage people to really learn about who they are and their significance, because when we do that, we're more equipped to sort of use our power responsibly and create the change we've wanted, as opposed to waiting for some change to affect us
Okay.
passively. So
Such as the solar event.
yes.
Yes. And I'd like to add that our sun is a conscious being. And that may seem off to the wall to a lot of people, but wouldn't you agree it's a conscious entity?
Yeah, definitely. It seems to be at a level that's not as comprehensible for us as another person would be, but
Yes,
at a
indeed.
higher level of, say, galactic maturity, this is, yeah, I would definitely agree. Um,
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Shem, so much for joining us today and for your huge contribution to the Sol2Soul Global Summit. I mean, this is just perfection having you here.
oh yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my
I'm,
pleasure. My pleasure.
yeah, it's been amazing. I mean, I don't think I've ever looked at the sun with such appreciation before.
Mm.
So yeah, this has been a great opportunity. I definitely extend my gratitude.
Thank you, Shem. And thank you, our viewers, for joining us today. And please come back for our next interview. And thank you. Just thank you so much, Shem.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Bye, everybody.